From her casually glossing over the whole Josh Giddey situation to her weird agenda against black men, this is the dark truth about Malika Andrews. Now, to get the hate around Malika, we first need to talk about the latest that's stirring up around Oklahoma City Thunder shooting guard Josh Giddey. Things have gotten a bit complicated lately, with new videos and photos of him and a young girl surfacing online. Social media is buzzing, and it seems like everyone's eager to weigh in on the story. Malika Andrews has been caught up in the middle of this. It's a bit unusual because Andrews is typically the one giving her take on sports controversies. But now some NBA fans are questioning why she hasn't commented on Giddey's situation. They're pointing out that she's usually pretty vocal when it comes to other players' issues. As for the other key figures in this drama, we've got a few notable names. First off, there's Josh Giddey himself, who's right at the heart of this controversy. The rumors and allegations involving a teenage girl are the main reasons why this has become such a talked-about issue. Then there's Stephen A. Smith, a name that's pretty familiar in the world of sports commentary. He's known for his strong opinions, and his involvement in this discussion isn't surprising. And we can't overlook Dez Bryant, the former Dallas Cowboys receiver. Since leaving the NFL, he's been more vocal about player rights and isn't shy about sharing his views. Josh Giddey is the player at the center of this. The latest buzz is that his team, the Oklahoma City Thunder, was already clued in about this whole situation. And there's this twist about the girl's parents not wanting to work with the police. The word on the street is that she might have lied about her age, which puts Giddey in a different light, possibly even clearing his name. Then there's Stephen A. Smith. You've probably heard him chime in on just about everything in sports. This time he's been cautious about diving into the Giddey saga. He mentioned worries about legal issues, which I get. When you're dealing with sensitive stuff like this, you've got to watch your step to avoid a legal mess. But one person who's surprisingly stayed quiet on this whole thing is Malika Andrews. Some people are scratching their heads, wondering why she hasn't said a peep about Giddey. It's interesting because in the past, she's been pretty vocal, especially about issues involving black athletes. Take, for example, the late NBA player Adrian Payne. After he passed away, Andrews brought up an allegation against him that turned out to be false. That move raised a few eyebrows about her approach to reporting. And then there's also what she did with Giannis Antetokounmpo. See, before Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks clinched the 2021 NBA championship, they seemed to be caught in a frustrating pattern. They'd have a stellar regular season, but when the playoffs rolled around, they just couldn't break through. This was particularly evident in 2019. That year, Giannis really upped his game, winning his first NBA MVP and leading many to believe the Bucks were destined for the championship, especially during the Eastern Conference Finals against the Toronto Raptors. Initially, it looked like the Bucks were on their way, taking a 2-1 series lead. But then, the momentum shifted dramatically. Kawhi Leonard of the Raptors stepped up, and Toronto won 4 consecutive games, snatching the finals berth right out of Milwaukee's grasp. In the middle of all this, Andrews wrote an article speculating about the possibility of Giannis leaving the Bucks. It was a bold move, considering how close they had come to reaching the finals. So, when Giannis was asked about this defeat in a press conference, especially in the context of Andrews' article, he responded by walking out. There's also the case of Brandon Miller, the Alabama Crimson Tide standout, who was picked second overall by the Charlotte Hornets. In January, while Miller was still at the University of Alabama, he became tangentially involved in a murder case. Though he was never charged, the incident remained unresolved, casting a shadow over his bright future. This was not just a mere footnote in his career. It was something that NBA teams would inevitably scrutinize during their comprehensive pre-draft assessments. It's standard practice for teams to delve deep into the backgrounds of their potential picks. But the way the situation was brought to light in the media, particularly by Malika Andrews, sparked a significant debate. During a panel discussion, Andrews raised Miller's name in connection with the court testimony surrounding the fatal shooting of 23-year-old Jamia Harris. Miller had been identified as a cooperating witness, a detail that, while legally exonerating, still painted a complex picture. This mention by Andrews was met with criticism from Dez Bryant, the former Dallas Cowboys wide receiver. Bryant questioned the necessity of bringing up such a topic, especially considering Miller's clean legal slate. This wasn't an isolated incident for Andrews. She had previously faced criticism from other athletes, including Kwame Brown, the first overall pick of the 2001 NBA draft. Brown accused Andrews of misrepresenting co-host Jalen Rose during a segment on ESPN's NBA Today. Anyway, despite the controversy, the Charlotte Hornets, under Jordan's leadership, went ahead with drafting Miller. This decision implied a level of confidence in Miller's character and potential. However, the media's focus, particularly by Andrews and ESPN, on Miller's involvement in the case during the draft broadcast became a point of contention. Some viewers felt it was unnecessary to revisit a painful and legally resolved incident from Miller's past, while others argued that Andrews, as a journalist, had an obligation to address the issue, albeit sensitively. The point I'm trying to make is that Malika does have a tendency to talk about certain players and not talk about others when they have allegations. Let's consider the timeline of the Josh Giddey situation. The news broke on Thanksgiving morning, a day when Andrews didn't film. It wasn't until the following Monday that she addressed it, which was her first opportunity to do so. However, you're not alone in feeling underwhelmed by her coverage. It seems like she gave it a brief mention, perhaps around 50 seconds or so, before moving on to another topic, almost as if it were a quick side note before a commercial break. This approach raises questions. On one hand, Andrews did eventually discuss the Giddey situation, which could be seen as fulfilling her journalistic duty. On the other hand, the seemingly brief and somewhat indifferent coverage might suggest a lack of interest or a deliberate choice to downplay the issue. This contrasts with her more extensive discussions of other athletes' controversies. This brings us to a very important question. Should Malika Andrews be dismissed from her role as an NBA analyst? Andrews, like any journalist, operates in a field where every word and action is closely scrutinized. In the world of sports, where passions run high and fans deeply connect with teams and players, this scrutiny intensifies. The allegations surrounding Josh Giddey and the way Andrews reportedly handled them, briefly and perhaps indifferently, have raised eyebrows. But is this enough to warrant her dismissal? One school of thought argues that journalists must be held to the highest standards of fairness and objectivity. Inconsistencies in reporting, especially when dealing with sensitive topics like allegations against athletes, can erode public trust. If Andrews is perceived as being selective in her coverage, favoring some stories over others without clear rationale, this could be seen as a failure to uphold journalistic integrity. In such a context, calls for her dismissal might reflect a desire for accountability in sports journalism, ensuring that those who report on the game do so with an even hand. However, it's essential to consider the complexities of sports journalism. Reporters like Andrews operate under various pressures, including editorial directives, time constraints, and the need to balance thorough reporting with engaging storytelling. Sometimes the brevity of a report isn't necessarily a sign of indifference or bias, but rather a result of these competing demands. Moreover, the decision to fire a journalist should not be taken lightly, as it sets a precedent about the limits of journalistic freedom and the influence of public opinion on reporting. Furthermore, firing Andrews based on perceived shortcomings in a few instances might ignore the broader context of her work. Has she consistently demonstrated bias, or are these isolated incidents? Does her overall body of work show a pattern of unprofessionalism, or do these moments represent exceptions in an otherwise commendable career? The decision to retain or dismiss a journalist should be based on a comprehensive evaluation of their work, not just a reaction to a single controversy. This situation also opens a broader conversation about the role of sports media. What is the balance between reporting the facts and engaging the audience? How should sports journalists navigate the complex and often emotionally charged stories that emerge from the world of professional sports? They challenge us to think about what we expect from those who report on the sports we love, and how those expectations shape the narratives presented to us. In considering Andrews' case, these questions loom large. In a world increasingly influenced by quick news cycles and social media reactions, the role of the sports journalist is more critical and challenging than ever. So, from her weird agenda against black men to her casually glossing over the whole Josh Giddey situation, this was the dark truth about Malika Andrews.